All right, welcome back. We'll just continue where we left off. We're just going over the reviews from week 2. So the assignment here is what we're talking about. I'll just keep going through these. All right, this one, missing the name. I know this is actually Thomas. Here, let's open this one in Illustrator. Text has been outlined. Okay, thank you. All right, so one of the things that I was looking at on this one, really simple fix. If we can adjust this image. I think it's all right. It works as it is. It got the good color gradient going on. I think that works for what he has here. Maybe this background may not so much be necessary. And we could maybe use, just the text. Oh, it's going to do that weird thing where it won't change colors on me again. Not sure what's going on with that. That works. I think we can see it at least. It's not. I know that's not preserving the font integrity, especially here with these pieces. But we can kind of see what's going on. So, beware of those rectangle elements. I know it's the easy thing to do. You can just add a rectangle in back and make that more readable, but try to avoid that. A lot of times you get this whole thing where you're using too many rectangles. Try to figure out a different solution. Ask yourself, what can you do besides just putting a rectangle to make that font, that title there, more readable? And just even taking that rectangle off, I think now that we look at that piece and it integrates a little bit more with the background and with this piece here. So the other thing that I would do is, I was telling him I'd either make this larger, so we can't really see. It's probably not method of choice. But the other thing we could do is make it smaller. I think that one works a little bit better as far as doing what he's going for. And I think we could maybe stretch it vertically so this goes up the top, or possibly even runs off the top, which can work. Because if anytime something goes off the edge, you imply that it continues outside the boundaries of this frame, and a lot of times that's a good thing. Not always, but a lot of times it is, and you want to imply that. It strengthens the piece to show that it continues beyond this frame here. So we got this compared to this. That's kind of hard to see, but make this smaller. I don't know. Have we made an improvement? I think we have. Even if it's subtle. Here, there we go. Now I can see both. And again, I know that the font is kind of not as good as it looks here, but I can't seem to get that to work with going back and forth in different versions like we have been, like I have been here. So one to the other, make them smaller, make it more visible. All right, something like that. So hopefully that makes sense. What I did here is just keep it within the boundaries and made it smaller, except the steam kind of went off the top, and that's optional. I kind of like that effect. But before, it's just run right up to the edge. That shadow, just almost kissing the edge. This cup almost kissing the edge, and this one, the point going right to the edge. It just doesn't quite. There's a lot of tension in this image because of that. And I don't think you want tension in this case. It's one thing if you're trying to build tension and going for something like that. Maybe you're doing a horror movie poster this week or something. And you want to make arrangements that are a little bit odd and kind of disturbing, and right on the, almost kissing the edge or kissing other elements, but not quite touching them or overlapping. So you can do that sort of stuff, and it gives this kind of slightly jarring effect. But right now we're getting that slightly jarring effect and the point going to the edge here. And we're getting that, but we don't really have a reason for it. So, you always heard, make sure that you have a reason, make sure that you have a reason for breaking rules. So know the rules how's the saying? There's nobody here to help me now. I can't remember how the saying goes. Learn the rules before you break them. That's what I'm going for. But anyways, that's good advice, I think. If you have a reason to break those rules, then do it. But this is kind of rule breaking in the sense that it's almost touching the edge, but it's not really working in our favor. So we're creating this visual tension here, 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 and here, and we just don't need to. So there's a few other things you could probably do here, but I kind of like this. I think this is a pretty good treatment on the left. This isn't bad what he's got either. But consider a few of these things that we did. All right, moving on. This is Vicki Graham's nice looking piece. I think she did another one too. Why don't we open that one? Because she did a couple. Let's see, another PNG image. Looks like she did these in Illustrator herself, either traced them or vector traced, or maybe she did them with the, this looks like she probably used this tablet, like the way these lines look. But either way, I think she did a good job on both of these. It turned out good. I like the imagery. I think she's got a good sense for the colors. The texture's great. The typefaces she used work really well. Let's see, as far as composition and layout goes, it's working okay. I think here we've got, again, we talked about pushing kind of our titles to the side or giving them too much separation. That might be going a little bit far, and you might want to keep Bell if use. I don't know how you say that or what it means, but you might want to keep those closer in proximity rather than putting one at the top, one at the bottom. And the fact that this element here, the woman and her profile, it does tie the two together pretty well, this diagonal coming down. It does tie them together pretty well. So you could debate about whether or not you need to do that, but I think generally that's something you want to consider is when you're going to break up words like that. You don't want to give them too much space. You do have this linking element, so it does work in this case. And I think she did the same thing here with the statue and linking those two together. But here I'm kind of seeing a lot of blending of belly and DS. I don't know how to say that once again, but those are hard to read in this case. So some sort of treatment where those pop forward a little bit more, that would be helpful. Maybe you've got this flowing hair. Maybe it's flowing hair behind it, and it doesn't have so many lines in it or something. Maybe the hair flows out here behind belly, and this drape kind of flows behind Deus. So you could work with that a little bit and get those colors, maybe even keep them both colors. Colors will actually tie it together too. Like this color here being different than this one, that again kind of adds to the separation. So even, and it's not that I'm saying it doesn't work, but it's just like that does feel fairly far apart if you normally want to keep those words together. So, but I do like what she's got going. I like her graphics. I like how she did the layout. And yeah, overall, I'd say good job on this one. Good choice of elements and a lot of things that are working well. All right. Adam Blackwell, this one was good. Like this one quite a bit. I think, let me try to, I'm not sure. This was created in Illustrator. It looks like it wasn't created in Illustrator. Probably Photoshop, but the main thing, I really like this one. This is one of my more favorite ones in the class. I think I like the choice of the Gala de Luna typeface up here. I like the clouds and the notes, really well integrated. Let's try something here. Okay, so that's not going to be, let's open this up in Photoshop. Ask me, I'm sure, no, it didn't. Good. All right, so think about overlapping and how overlapping will show depth. And that's that one thing that I want to add to Adam's piece here is a sense of, you know, if you just did this with one building, does the overlapping work any better? So let's test it out. You know, I don't really know for sure if it's going to work, but when we're looking at all these separate elements, let's see. It'd be better if we overlapped over here. So hopefully that's kind of showing what I mean. Although I want to have some more visual separation there, so that would maybe be one thing you could do. So you can do it stylistically how it is. It's not bad. I think it works if that's what you want to do. And it's, again, you're breaking the rules in terms of like not having 4 elements out there and none of them overlap. Consider just adding one that ends up overlapping. And I think it tends to tie the scene a little bit more together. Now there's some other things like, you know, that doesn't look all that great. I think I can still work with this building some more. But hopefully I'll show enough of what I mean. We'll just get the back of that. Now maybe it could use some kind of separation over here to make this work. Let's see, let's do a drop shadow. Not literally, but just so I can get some outline over here. And it's kind of out of the norm in terms of the style that he's using. So maybe I don't want to do a drop shadow per se, but maybe some kind of a treatment. The windows are really kind of geometric and simple. Maybe what would be better is than the drop shadow is just kind of a shadow, but it's got a hard edge to it. And I could actually do that in Photoshop here. there we go. I just decrease the size and add to the distance. Now I've got that a harder edge, which is more in character with his piece, his hard edge windows and buildings. So if it's soft and blurry, it probably doesn't, do the trick that we want. But anyway, hopefully that kind of makes the point. And in fact, we'll do it like this. Add another layer. Sample this blue color. Maybe didn't want to go all the way up. Something like so. All right, so my whole point is whenever you have like the, several different elements like this, and you don't have any overlapping, it's going to create kind of a flattened effect. And if you want that, which you could have, if you want it, then that's fine. But if you add just one or two overlapping elements, you can kind of add a new dimension to that piece and just make it a little bit more, add more depth to it. So that's all I'm trying to do here. And whether or not I'm making the point, I guess that's up to you, but I think it's looking a little bit better. Or at least it's, now you're not showing all these separated pieces. So, okay, I'm trying to get this to. Anyway, hopefully that. I can move these buildings around, and I kind of like that a little bit more. So now, hopefully that shows that it's more of a city rather than just all. See the difference before, after. Anyway, so hopefully that gets the idea across. That's the same building now. So we want to do this. I have a hard time letting anything go that doesn't look quite the way I want it. Kind of now playing with this a little bit too long. Trying to move on. I think it makes a point, but it's really an option. Do you want it flat? It works kind of stylistically, but putting some depth in there, all you need is to add that one building for overlap. You could do probably something a little bit more with September 8th, 7th, 12th, making PM smaller, maybe making September smaller, the numbers larger, things like that could be treated like, it's good that you have it in here, but it's still a little bit of an afterthought compared to the amount of work that went into up here and the rest of this. So things like that can lower the quality of your piece. And so you want to think about, how can you really took a lot of time on this area here. Make sure you take time and kind of develop that so that, even if you use scale on some of these, it just feels like it was kind of slapped in at the last minute. And maybe it wasn't. I like the fact that he's got the texture going on in here. That works, but consider like some of these different sizes. PM doesn't have to be so big. 7 through 12, can be larger. Maybe September can be smaller. I don't know. Different treatments on this date and time I would consider. But, overall, I think this is great. I like the way this turned out. I like the bricks. I like the abstraction. I like the whole simplicity of it. Yeah, good job on this. Hopefully that gives you some other things to think about. I think, too, you can look at it small, and it's like, all right, does this work better than that? It's kind of a toss-up. I mean, do you want to show depth or not? So, we can talk about another thing I'll try really fast is what if these continued out here? Actually, let me merge those layers. Use a layer mask, but I'm not going to save this anyway, so I could just delete it. So actually, the name for it that I've heard it called is open framing or closed framing. Right now, you've got a closed frame going on because everything that we see is happening within this closed frame. But again, it's like, does the scene continue outside of our frame here? And that's for you to decide. So it adds, some new depth to it sometimes when you can look at it and consider, oh yeah, that the whole scene goes way beyond those boundaries of that frame. It adds some dimension to your piece a lot of times. So that's another thing to consider. Now these are maybe getting a little crowded here, but we'll move on. I think spend enough time playing around with these. That's kind of fun. I like that. So now we're getting a more compact, dense city with some overlapping. I always like to make things small like that. Just like zoom out, look at the thumbnail. All right, what works on the thumbnail here? They almost look like dominoes when you're zoomed out. That's kind of cool. That's kind of the stylistic effect. Common in Art Nouveau is that stylizing and that simplification, or even more, making things more elaborate than they normally would be. Now we can kind of see, does this work better than this? And really, when I'm looking at those two, it's a toss-up. I could almost take or leave that. Got it again. I am actually leaning toward this. I like the overlapping a little more just because they felt too separate, I think, when I first looked at that. But it's still a nice piece, so good work on that. Moving on. Okay, that didn't have any text on it, so that was the problem on that one, mainly. Let's look at this one. So good choice of ornament here and good choice of text or font, typeface rather. Be one with nature, means bed and breakfast. I mean, that's good. We know what this is. This is another one where I think this, following the form of this element here would really add to it. So you have that curved baseline going around the top. Maybe the bottom could probably stay straight baseline in this case, but it might also work curved. But you've got the bottom of the ornament is flat, more or less, not really flat, but you can see it kind of works that way. You can draw a straight line across, so that works this way. But if this was larger and then kind of followed the baseline of this, followed the curve of that ornament, I think you'd really have a nice piece here. And I think you do have a nice piece anyways, but you'd have that much more improvement if you had this kind of curving along the top and running along the top of this ornament. But like the texture, I like the choice of, You know, these are definitely the flowy kind of shapes that you see commonly in Art Nouveau, and the typography is really well chosen for this. I mean, it works really well, I think. But just, yeah, probably could be a little bit more integrated that way if we rounded that top. And looks like this is a different color, so we're kind of blending in. If anything, you want your title to, you know, kind of what's pulling you in, your headline here, to be emphasized. So I would say this would work better if it was the same brown color here. And then, you know, curved baseline. I think you really have a nice piece. Obviously, too, I think it could be a little bit larger. Think about if someone's going to be able to read that across the room. Always think of your main ornament as compared to the size of the text. And can somebody read that across the hotel lobby? Can they read it walking by when they're carrying their suitcases and glance over? Or maybe it's at the bus stop or something, or it's, you know, you think about where these ads might be placed. Bed and breakfast is not probably going to be a sign in a hotel lobby, but maybe it is on a street corner, or could be at a restaurant. Maybe it's on the back of a bus bench or something, you know, many different places it could be. But when you look at it from as far, you always got to consider that. How well is that going to be read size-wise? Am I okay with this compared to the overall piece? And you always want people to be able to read it for an ad like this. No problem reading it at all. So anyways, a few things on this, but good job overall. Let's see, Megan Sawyer. I like this one. One of the things that I would say would be to move this center part up. Probably a good, I don't know. So Victoria's maybe starts up here. Day Spa just feels low. And remember, you know, if it looks low, you're kind of symbolically dropping that, lowering that key message below the center. So you're pushing it down from the top. But centered, you know, make sure that it's in the center, and it, even visually, you're going to want to tap it up a few times. You're going to want to, you know, you'll, for example, use that align panel in whatever was used for this, you know, in Photoshop, InDesign, or Illustrator. They all have that aligned to Canvas or Artboard or whatever you're using. It'll align your element. Let's say it's this Victoria's Day Spa with the elements here underneath. Let's say that's your central thing. It'll align it, but it won't put it in the visual center. It'll put it in the exact center. So what you want to do is tap it up a few times till it looks like visual center. Because we always, for some reason, at least people, when they look at something, it tends to look like it's a little bit lower than it is. So that's one general thing that you always want to do, is just tap it up a few times from after you use the alignment tool. Hit it up a few times to the point that it looks centered. Because if you use the alignment tool, a lot of times it just won't. That might have been what she did, is use the alignment tool here. But if you look at it from afar, that's not visually centered. It might be exactly to the measurement. It might be, you know, if InDesign, or let's say Illustrator was used for this, you know, it might take this whole thing and group it and then center that box. That's what InDesign does, for example. So it centers that. Take the center of that. Well, that even looks low. But, you know, it'll typically place it dead center. But you're always going to have to nudge it up a few times in order for it to look visual center. So anyways, I do like the ornaments. I think, you know, this works, other than this just being a little bit too low. Tito Trujillo. This looks good. I think the only thing that I would say on this one is adding texture would help this one. Some sort of either texture in the background, texture on both the foreground and the background, or texture on the foreground. But that's one thing that it could use, I think, is especially if you're going for that Art Nouveau look, kind of aged and weathered, and see a lot of texture in that style, and that would be the one thing it feels like it's missing. But overall, I'd say it's good. The layout's good, all centered. I think this piece works. I think the general shapes work. They may not be all of them too on board with Art Nouveau. You don't see, well, a lot of this kind of the batwing shape for Art Nouveau, but it could be. Bottom line is I do think it works overall pretty well. So nice job with that. The main thing I would just say is adding texture could really help bring it up a notch or two. All right. True Royalty. This one is it's got some texture going on. I think one of the things here might be that gray. It's all right. It's not bad. I think it's maybe a little bit too close to the same tone as that brown. So it's kind of providing like a visual ring to it that's not all that great. I think you look at it and it's like it blends, but it doesn't quite blend. And it's almost irritating to look at because those values between the gray and the brown are so close in nature that it's kind of difficult to look at. So I might play around with some different values on these and the background. But the texture's subtle. I think it works. True Royalty. Not quite the Art Nouveau style. It's more, a little bit of a, I guess, imperial style, or I'm not really sure how to categorize this particular style with the old school typeface, black letter typeface. It's kind of like, appropriate going for True Royalty. I'm not quite sure what it is. If you, put in there cologne or, whiskey or whatever it is. Again, this is one of those things that could benefit from some sort of a tagline about what it is. So, anytime that there's confusion involved as to what something is, consider that you don't want to confuse your audience. That's the last thing that a designer generally wants to do, unless that's part of the outline, part of the plan. You always want to clarify what you're doing, what you're showing, and this seems to need some sort of a label. True Royalty beer, whatever it is, need to see that. Royalty looks a little bit off center, actually. Could be moved so that it's more center. Looks like it needs to be moved to the left. Very symmetrical design, but it's consistent. It seems to work. So anyway, a few things to consider on that one. All right, he's not here today, but Lyle Jenkins. Namaste, Inner Peace, 7 free lessons. I mean, I get it. I think he's, this is a good one. I like the colors he chose, kind of a complementary yellow, purple. I like the font. I think that fits. Namaste, Inner Peace. Inner Peace should be P-E-A-C-E though. P-E-A-C-E. Watch those spelling errors. 7 free lessons. I think it works well. Maybe consider using a different font in here, like some other font to work in. Maybe I think this is Herculanum is the name of the font face. I'm guessing that's what it is. It's kind of an interesting font. But consider something else. Maybe a sans serif font or something different to work into this and add some more variety there. Also, you're looking at the outlines on here. Always think about, well, what might not be necessary. For example, you got this black stroke on all of this here. But maybe all it would need is just a solid and not have all that stuff going on. I do like that. I mean, all these elements are appropriate, and we've got like this whole kind of mandala looking thing, and it looked like you made this and rotated this. I think this turned out pretty good. I like the ornamentation of this coming along on the frame here, how they interweave. Did a pretty good job on that. However, I think it would look better if it didn't have that stroke or the black stroke, especially because when you look at how the black stroke goes in, and I can't blow it up like that. Kind of just clogs up these areas of the points and just doesn't really do it as much justice as maybe those shapes would look without the stroke. So I wouldn't mind seeing that without the stroke, but that's another thing you can work on. That and the typefaces, maybe just add try a different font maybe for 7 free lessons, or spell peace, P-E-A-C-E, and maybe that's a different font. Anyway, some ideas. I thought overall, though, you did a pretty good job on this. And colors were on the mark. So, works for me. This one's good. Again, just not quite hitting the Art Nouveau style, but I do like what they've got going. The other thing is Quezada. Those letters are too distorted. So something a little bit less distorted than that. You can curve this. You've got that curved baseline, which I keep talking about, which is good, especially on a little square format like this. Keeps your eye kind of in the piece. Keeps us look at this and then kind of come back to this. Here, the center's being utilized. We've got her looking right at us, and it's direct contact with the viewer. Not that that's always what we're looking for, but that can be a very strong kind of a photograph where that person's looking right at you. And I think that's one of those things you do have to use sparingly and in the right situations. But this could definitely do that, because it's just imagine an ad on the corner. This is very effective for getting your attention, just having a person very large looking right at you. People are always going to identify with that. It's great for advertising most of the time. People say it's overused, and certainly it can be used out of context where it doesn't work so well. But yeah, I think in this case, it works. So other than just the distortion of the fonts, the strokes on these, again, careful of strokes because they do tend to clog up, but it doesn't look bad here. I think this looks okay. Maybe it would work better without, or just with this thinner stroke, so you could have at least the same weight of stroke on both of your elements. That'll tie it together a little bit more. And but overall, I think she did a good job on this, and it's not quite hitting on the Art Nouveau, but we've got a few elements in there, so we could have maybe a few more Art Nouveau elements. But overall, other than the distortion of the text and some of the strokes being more consistent, I think this is a pretty successful piece. I think it came together pretty well. All right, so one more to go. Let's look at this one. All right, we've got the frame going on. A lot of this, maybe think about what you don't need in this case. Maybe these black ornaments could be deleted. You could just have this and it would provide enough of that frame to draw us toward the center. One of the things that I was confused about on this one was, what exactly is going on in the center? What's the focus of the piece? I think this fire, maybe it looks like a fire that's floating outside of the ring or something. That could be an interesting concept, but I'm not really sure what exactly it is. These lines could be maybe cleaned up. Not sure if that one was intended or not. But yeah, I mean, I think you just got to really hone in on what you're trying to say. Yankee is the only thing that it says. I'm not quite getting the message. I'm not quite getting what she's after here. Font could be better chosen to match these ornaments. Notice the thick and thins here, but these are all mostly a mono weight. It just doesn't seem to fit as well as it could for that font. But mainly I would go back to just like, what exactly are you trying to show? What's the real point here? Are we going to show this fire in the center? Is it actually a floating fire? It could be interesting as far as a symbol goes. It's floating outside of this ring. But it almost seems like these are just mistakes that were made that weren't entirely cleaned up. I don't know what exactly those vertical lines are. Not sure, but I'm, missing the mark as far as what her intention was in terms of what she's communicating with this. But it really wouldn't take a whole lot to adjust this and probably say what she's trying to say. But I was admittedly confused in terms of what exactly is this piece trying to advertise. What are they trying to show here? So Art Nouveau, well, there's a couple. Some of these elements are Art Nouveau or could be considered Art Nouveau-ish, especially the swirly ones. A campfire, maybe, but it usually will have to have a lot more stylization than that. So I'm not really sure, too, what happened to this one. It's kind of fading in the background where all the others are in the foreground. I guess that's what I would say. The texture going on and back is okay. I probably wouldn't make it so blurry, but I mean, you could if it was maybe on, like, instead of white, something that matched closer to that brown color. So right now it really calls attention to the fact that it's blurry. Which, well, it depends on what you're going for. Again, I'm not really sure what she was after. So that would be the only thing. But anyways, I think we've reached the 4 o'clock mark, and nobody's in class. It's not easy to do a full class with nobody here, but I've managed before. And I suppose I'll manage again. Manage today. All right, so tomorrow we're going to do these either the assessment 1 or assignment, or the assessment 3 or the assignment 3. We'll see what we're going to do and put that one together. Kind of my take on it, step by step, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye.